fit journey and continuing on with ballet foundations. If you haven't watched the previous 2 videos in this series, make sure you do that because I'm going to continue on with those talks. So the first one, I talked a lot about just the basic positions, turning out. The second one, I was talking about the seat and turning out there. I also started talking about demi-plies and pressing into the floor. So we're going to talk about plies now. A plie is not only a stretch, but it is also a muscle building exercise to help you with jumps. And if you just think about, okay, how is that going to help me do jumps? You have to do the motion effectively. You have to have purpose with it. So definitely go back to this, especially the second half of that last video where I talk about rotating the thighs out and then pressing into the floor while extending up, while I'm lifting. So I'm pressing into the floor, but I'm lifting up with the rest of my body. My quadriceps are lifting. They're lifting my kneecaps up, not hyperextending, not squeezing back, but lifting everything up. That is what is going to get you off the ground. So this motion right here of pressing, if you go faster and more forcefully, that's what's going to get you off the ground. But it starts at the bar. The bar is for training your body to do things in center, across the floor in performances, okay? So don't just go through the motions. This isn't doing anything. Get your stretch in, press into the ground, okay? With a demi-plie. Demi, in first position, demi means small, grand means large or big. You always want to have that nice diamond shape. So we talked about 4-step check, turning everything out. I'm going to talk a little bit about your quadriceps, and we will actually talk more about quadriceps later. There's a lot of, I don't want to say misinformation, but a lot of confusing information with dealing with our thigh muscles in dance. Because a lot of teachers, and I say this as well, will say, don't squeeze your quadricep. It is correct in some ways, but not in others. Yes, obviously you have to squeeze your quadricep to make your leg work. But there's a difference between engaging your quadricep and so much that it hyperextends your knee or stops your leg versus lifting. So activating your quadricep, maybe think about activating or lifting your quadricep instead of just flat out squeezing your quadricep or using it that way. So if I'm in a first position and I have nothing going on, then my quadriceps are super loose, right? So if I think about lifting my kneecap, so think about squeezing right there, and you may need to look in a mirror to kind of play with this, figure it out on your body. If I think about lifting my kneecap, it engages that muscle where it lifts up my leg. That's what I mean by engaging the quadricep. That's what you want to do. I'm not squeezing it so much that it's stiff as a board. So there's still, if I lift up, there's still a little bit of play in my upper muscle. If I squeeze here, did you see my knees go back? I hyperextend my leg. There's nothing going on there. Don't squeeze so much that you can't use your leg. So think more about actively engaging, lifting with that quadricep. Everything is about lifting, right? Okay. So with that, starting with our plies, we have our demi, have your heels together, right? Again, I talked a little bit about that in the first one. That's where we don't want to be hyperextending our knees, because if we're hyperextending our knees, either we're pressing in with our quadricep or we haven't quite figured out how to use those muscles, okay? So try not to totally hyperextend those knees because eventually you're going to hurt yourself, okay? All right, so demi-plie, we have taking those legs back, the knees back, we have that nice diamond position. Our hips are even. Don't let one hip be higher than the other. Our seat is not back, our seat is neutral. Everything wraps around. Coming up, we're going to press those heels down. Think about your squishing grapes, right? Okay, so there's our demi-plie. Actively working our demi-plie. For a grand, your goal is to keep those heels on the ground as long as possible and get them back to the ground. So I'm going to go down as far as I can, keep in proper form, and then at the very last moment, my heels are going to come up. I'm going to go just as far down until my thighs and my calves touch, and then I'm going to press those heels into the ground as soon as I can. That's where that big stretch comes in, right? It's super important to do not only demis, but also grand plies, okay? So going down, keep those heels down as soon as they kiss, and then you're going to press those heels down. Again, keeping that nice diamond shape. My seat is very much engaged. I can feel it. I can feel it in my inner thighs. I'm rotating everything outwards, but I'm not squeezing my bottom to tuck my pelvis under. There's a difference between activated, my behind is working, but it is not clenched, okay? Don't clench your muscles and dance. Activate, yes. So we have our grand plie there. Second position, I would like your second position about hip width apart on your body. So my demi, again, my knees are tracking over the tops of my feet, rotating my heels, not my heels, my knees backwards. Everything is nice and lined. Chest is open, ribs are quiet, and I'm going to press my heels into the ground. I feel out my inner thighs. Seat is wrapping. So this is my demi plie. My grand is not much farther than that. Second plie, grand plie, your knees, your heels do not come off the ground and your bottom does not pass your knees. I see that in a lot of different exercises, and I think this goes kind of more into the method of your training. So I'll see people who will do this big grand plie. You can do that sometimes if you're doing a stretch, but a typical second position, your feet are hip width apart, because if you had point shoes on, imagine you had point shoes on, you're clear up here, and if you're clear out there, you're going to end up on your seat, right? So you need to teach your body, because if I'm doing a chaise or something in second position, especially if I'm on point, I need to know exactly where that is. And if I haven't trained my body to know exactly where second position is, whether it's here, whatever, then, it's all muscle memory. You've got to train your body. So second position, my demi plie, there's my grand. I cannot go any farther than that unless I stick my bottom out, we don't want that, or I go nice and wide. There is a place and a time for going nice and wide. There's never a time for that, okay? All right, third position, we're gonna kind of bypass that. You can do third position or fifth position when we get that. We're gonna go to fourth position now. Fourth position is one of your feet away from the other one. Your hips are square. So hopefully you can have a room that has an angle to it, so you can be square with your room. You want to make sure that your hips are evenly facing the wall in front of you. Think about, this is something we teach little kids, but think about your headlights, or your little cinnamon rolls, right? They remember that. So if you've got headlights on your hips, your headlights should not be facing the corner. Your headlights should be facing straight to the front. Now, with your turnout, you want to have your legs equally turned out. A lot of times what happens is that front leg will turn out more and the back leg will be in. And actually my headlights will be going that way. So you want to externally rotate your legs evenly. And fourth position and fifth position, that's where it's very, very important to pay attention. Now, it doesn't really happen as much. It's a lot easier to pay attention where the hips are in first position, second position, because it's a very flat position. But once we cross those legs, if you have not been working on your turnout, then everything can kind of go wonky. Now, this does not mean you have to have a turnout like that, no. So your natural turnout, if you have to do your fourth position from third, if that's better for your body today, that's what you need to do. Because if you end up crossing over from fifth position, and like if you're sitting in your back hip, if your hips are rotating, then you need to open it up just slightly for today, okay? Until you can work on crossing those thighs, yes? So crossing those thighs while keeping that even turnout, okay? So fourth position, about one of your feet away from the other one. As you demi, same thing we talked about, in nice diamond shape. It's not going to be as wide as if you're in first position. Knees are going to the back wall. Now your weight, you don't want your weight back and you don't want it forward. You want it evenly between both of your legs. So if you're doing battements across the floor, you will have a wider fourth position, but your body transitions. So you go from, like your weight goes from the back, then it stops in the middle, and then you lift, right? But your weight is in the middle. So those plies, and you'll be doing those, like if you go across the floor and do leaps, or any leap, you have a fourth position. That's your transition, that's your pass-through. So whether you think you do it or not, you have a fourth position, or you should have a fourth position as you chasse, as you run, whatever, right there before your leap. That's where your fourth position comes in. So that's what you want to work at. Also, when you do a chaise from fourth, those would be a little bit wider, but not too wide, because like the second position, if you're too wide, you're going to end up on the ground, especially if point shoes on. Okay, that's where all that comes from. Fourth position, turn out evenly. Hips are even, chest is even, shoulders are square over those hips. Your weight is between both of your legs, okay? As we dummy down, I want you to make sure that your back leg is turning out. A lot of times what happens is that back leg will rotate in and the front leg will be nice and turned out. Focus on that back leg, keeping that external rotation as you come up, squeezing your inner thighs, pressing those heels into the ground. That will help with the lift, right? All right, grand plie. Same thing as first. You're gonna go down until you cannot keep your heels on the ground. That's a nice Achilles tendon stretch. And then you're going to open, open, open really, really wide. Nice pop there. As soon as your thighs and your calves touch, pressing into the ground. So you're never gonna sit in that position, okay? Keeping that weight nice and even. A lot of times we'll see people, they'll end up sitting on your back heel. You don't want to do that. Rarely the weight is forward. That usually doesn't happen. Usually it's sitting back here, but you want to have that weight nice and even. It's not a super comfortable position. It's a stretch, okay? Fifth position. If you don't have that cross between your inner thighs, if you have not worked out how to engage it on your body, I want you to go to a third position, okay? I talked about our thighs being lifted. A lot of times I'll see people in fifth position and that front leg is very obviously bent, or it's kind of soft, it's kind of hanging out. So make sure you're lifting up through that quadricep. The leg is straight, not hyperextended, not pressing into that back leg, but the leg is straight, okay? Same thing as fourth, same thing as first. We're gonna do a nice plie, nice diamond shape. Right there. If I had a mirror in front of me, I should see, if you're in fifth position, not third, I should see one toe and two heels. I should see the whole part of my front foot and then the heel on my back foot, okay? That's that fifth position, okay? And turning the legs out, a nice diamond position, pressing your heels in to the floor while elongating your spine. So you're pressing down with your heels and lifting up through those quadriceps to a supporting leg. Your grand plie, same as the other ones. As soon as you get down where the thighs and the hamstring and your calves touch, that's when you come back up. So if you have a nice slow plie, you have to count it. So you don't do 1, 2, 3, 4 and then come up. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 and then coming up from there. As soon as that midpoint happens, that's where you touch and you come up, okay? So you're going to get that nice wide diamond. Back leg is turned out, back leg turned out, back leg turned out, and then press heels into the ground as soon as you can. Hips are engaged, everything is rotated, and my inner thighs are squeezing. This will help you a lot with things later on, but this is how you effectively do plies. So we'll see you again next time for more little tips and tricks on ballet positions.